Hey guys, welcome back to Fantasy Hub. Today's story is one of my favorites.
My name is Dr. Jillian Miller, and I thought I had my life figured out. 28 years old, sports medicine specialist, and the newest team physician for the Boulder Women's Soccer Club. I'd spent years building my reputation, staying focused, keeping my distance from anything that could compromise my career. I was the consummate professional until she walked into my office. It was a Tuesday morning in September when everything changed. The autumn air carried the scent of fallen leaves through my office window, and I was reviewing player files when I heard the distinctive sound of cleats on tile echoing down the hallway. The door opened, and there she was, Elaine Thomas, the team's star midfielder, limping slightly but still carrying herself with that unmistakable confidence that made her a force on the field. She was everything I'd heard about and more. Lean muscle wrapped in sun-kissed skin, dark hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, and eyes the color of storm clouds that seemed to see right through me. But it was her smile, that slightly crooked, devastatingly charming smile that made my breath catch. "Dr. Miller," she said, and even my name sounded different in her voice. "I'm Elaine. Though I'm guessing you already know that." I cleared my throat, trying to regain my composure. "Please have a seat on the exam table. I understand you're having some knee issues." She winced as she settled onto the table, her shorts riding up slightly on her thighs. I forced myself to look at her chart, not at the way her muscles moved beneath her skin. "On a scale of 1 to 10, how's the pain?" I asked, pulling on my gloves with practiced efficiency. "Depends," she said, and I could hear the grin in her voice even before I looked up. "You giving me the good drugs after this?" I couldn't help it. My lips twitched upward, cheeky, but I maintained my professional demeanor as I approached the table. "Let me take a look first." When I placed my hands on her knee to examine the swelling, everything changed. The moment my fingers brushed her skin, I felt it, an electric current that had nothing to do with medicine and everything to do with the way she was looking at me. Her breath hitched, just barely audible, but I caught it, and my pulse. It betrayed me, completely, hammering against my ribs like it was trying to escape. "The swelling isn't too bad," I managed to say, my voice steadier than I felt, "but I want to get some x-rays to be sure." "Whatever you think is best, Doc," she said, and there was something in her tone that made my stomach flip. "I'm in your capable hands." I stepped back, putting distance between us, but I could still feel the warmth of her skin on my fingertips. This was dangerous territory, and I knew it. But as I watched her slide off the table, favoring her injured leg, something inside me had already started to shift. 3 weeks later, I found myself at the annual sports medicine conference in Denver. It was supposed to be about research, networking, continuing education, all the things that would advance my career. What it wasn't supposed to be about was the way my heart raced when I spotted Elaine across the hotel bar. She wasn't supposed to be there. Players didn't typically attend medical conferences, but there she was, nursing a whiskey and looking impossibly beautiful in a simple black dress that hugged her curves in all the right places. When our eyes met across the crowded bar, she raised her glass in a small salute, and I knew I was in trouble. I tried to focus on the conversations around me, tried to engage with my colleagues about the latest developments in sports injury prevention, but I was acutely aware of her presence, of the way she moved through the room with that natural grace that made her such a formidable athlete. "Dr. Miller?" A colleague was trying to get my attention. "What's your opinion on the new ACL reconstruction techniques?" I was about to respond when I felt a presence beside me. Elaine had somehow made her way through the crowd without me noticing. "Sorry to interrupt," she said, flashing that killer smile at my colleague. "I just need to borrow the good doctor for a moment." Before I could protest, she was leading me toward a quieter corner of the bar. My skin tingled where her hand touched my arm, and I had to remind myself to breathe. "What are you doing here?" I asked, trying to keep my voice low. "Can't a girl be interested in sports medicine?" she said, signaling the bartender for another round. "Besides, I wanted to see you." The honesty in her voice caught me off guard. I accepted the drink she offered, our fingers brushing as she handed it to me. "Elaine, we can't what?" she interrupted, stepping closer. "Can't talk, can't be friends, can't acknowledge that there's something between us." I looked around nervously, but the bar was dim and everyone seemed absorbed in their own conversations. "There's nothing between us. You're my patient and I'm your doctor. That's all." She laughed, a low, throaty sound that made my pulse quicken. "Is that what you tell yourself? Because the way you looked at me during that exam, that wasn't very doctorly." "I was being professional," I said, but even I could hear how unconvincing I sounded. "Were you?" She moved closer, close enough that I could smell her perfume, something subtle and intoxicating. "Because I've been thinking about it for weeks, about the way your hands felt on my skin, about the way you were trying so hard not to look at me." My mouth went dry. "Elaine, ... What if I wasn't your patient tonight?" she whispered, her voice low and daring. "What if we were just two people who met at a bar?" The air between us thickened, charged with possibility. I could feel myself leaning in, drawn by the magnetic pull of her presence. Her eyes dropped to my lips, and I knew she was thinking the same thing I was. "We could pretend," she continued, her voice barely audible above the bar's ambient noise. "Just for tonight." I was so close I could feel her breath on my skin. Another inch and our lips would touch. Another second and I would cross a line I could never uncross. My phone buzzed. The sharp sound cut through the moment like a blade. I blinked, suddenly aware of where I was, what I was about to do. I pulled back, fumbling for my phone with shaking hands. "Team emergency," I read from the screen. One of the players was in an accident. Elaine's expression shifted immediately, from sultry to concerned. "Who? Are they okay?" "I don't know." "I have to go." I was already reaching for my purse, my mind switching back to professional mode. "I'm sorry, I..." "Don't apologize," she said, stepping back to give me space. "Go. Do what you do best." I started to leave, then turned back. She was watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Elaine, what almost happened?" "Almost," she said with a small smile, but didn't. "Go take care of your patient?" "Doc." But as I hurried out of the bar, I couldn't shake the feeling that something fundamental had shifted between us. The tension we'd created didn't disappear just because I walked away. If anything, it had only intensified. The call came at 2:47 a.m. on a Saturday night in November. I was dead asleep when my phone rang, jarring me awake with its insistent buzz. "Dr. Miller." The voice was panicked, unfamiliar. "This is Coach Martinez. We need you at St. Joseph's Hospital." Elaine Thomas was in an accident. My blood turned to ice. What happened? "Car accident. She was coming home from dinner with friends. The other driver ran a red light and T-boned her car. She's conscious, but she's asking for you." I was already pulling on clothes, my hands shaking as I grabbed my keys. "I'll be there in 15 minutes. The drive to the hospital was a blur of empty streets and racing thoughts. I kept telling myself that if she was conscious and asking for me, it couldn't be that bad. That the fear that had settled in my chest like a lead weight told a different story. I found her in the emergency department, and the sight of her made my heart clench. She was lying on a gurney, her face pale and drawn with pain. There was a cut on her forehead that had been bandaged, and her left leg was elevated and immobilized. "Elaine," I breathed, rushing to her side. Her eyes fluttered open at the sound of my voice. Jillian, she whispered, and I realized it was the first time she'd used my first name. You came. Of course I came. I took her hand without thinking, then realized what I was doing, but I didn't let go. How are you feeling? Like I got hit by a truck, she said with a weak smile, which ironically is basically what happened. I squeezed her hand gently. What's the damage? Torn ACL, she said, and I could hear the devastation in her voice. Maybe some ligament damage too. They're waiting for the MRI results. My heart sank. A torn ACL meant surgery, months of rehabilitation, possibly the end of her season. For an athlete like Elaine, it was devastating. Hey, I said softly, brushing a strand of hair from her forehead. We'll get through this. The surgery has come a long way, and I'll make sure you have the best rehabilitation program. She was quiet for a moment, studying my face. Will you stay with me tonight? I should have said no. I should have explained that I couldn't, that it wasn't appropriate, that there were other medical professionals who could take care of her. Instead, I said, of course. The next few hours passed in a haze of medical consultations, paperwork, and waiting. I stayed by her side through it all, holding her hand when the pain got bad, advocating for her with the other doctors, making sure she was comfortable. It wasn't until they gave her pain medication and she started to drift off that I realized how inappropriate my behavior had been. Jillian, she murmured, her voice slurred from the medication. Don't leave. I'm not going anywhere, I whispered. And I meant it. She tugged weakly at my hand, trying to pull me closer. Come here. I leaned down, thinking she wanted to tell me something. Instead, she lifted her head slightly and pressed her lips to mine. It was soft, tentative, tasting of antiseptic and possibility. For a moment, I froze. Then, despite every professional instinct screaming at me to stop, I kissed her back. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard. We can't, I whispered against her lips. Then why haven't you pulled away? She asked, her eyes heavy with medication and something else entirely. I didn't have an answer. Or rather, I had an answer I wasn't ready to admit. I stayed close, my forehead resting against hers until she fell asleep. But even then, I didn't let go of her hand. The photo was grainy, taken from a distance through a hospital window. But it was clear enough to see me leaning over Elaine's hospital bed, clear enough to capture the intimate moment between us. It ran on the front page of the local sports section 3 days later with a headline that made my blood run cold. Team doc and star player, medical misconduct or modern love. I was in my office when my phone started ringing. First it was my supervisor, then the hospital's legal department, then reporters. By noon, there were camera crews outside the medical facility, and I was being escorted out the back entrance like a criminal. The medical board hearing was scheduled for the following week. I sat in the waiting room, my hands shaking as I reviewed the formal complaint. Professional misconduct, violation of doctor-patient boundaries, potential loss of license. Everything I'd worked for was crumbling around me. Dr. Miller. The board. Secretary called my name. They're ready for you. I walked into the conference room on unsteady legs. The board members sat behind a long table, their faces stern and disapproving. I recognized some of them, colleagues I'd worked with, people who'd once respected me. Dr. Miller, the board chair began, you understand why you're here? Yes. Sir, the allegations are serious. A romantic relationship with a patient represents a fundamental breach of medical ethics. Do you have anything to say in your defense? I opened my mouth to speak, to explain, to somehow make them understand that it wasn't what it looked like. But before I could say anything, the conference room door burst open. Elaine walked in, still on crutches, but moving with determined grace. She was wearing a simple black dress and a blazer, her hair pulled back in a professional bun. She looked like she was ready for battle. "I'm sorry I'm late," she said, not sounding sorry at all. "I'm Elaine Thomas, and I think you gentlemen need to hear what I have to say." The board chair looked flustered. "Miss Thomas, this is a closed hearing." "You can't." "Actually, I can," she interrupted, producing a letter from her purse. "As the alleged victim in this case, I have the right to speak on my own behalf." She hobbled over to where I was sitting and, without hesitation, reached for my hand. I tried to pull away, aware of the board members watching our every move, but she held on tight. "What you're doing to Dr. Miller is wrong," she said, her voice clear and strong. "She has done nothing but provide me with excellent medical care. She has never acted inappropriately toward me or any other patient." "Miss Thomas," one of the board members interjected, "we have photographic evidence." "Of what?" Elaine challenged. "Of a doctor comforting a patient, of someone showing compassion during a difficult time. If that's a crime, then every good doctor in this city is guilty." I squeezed her hand, trying to signal her to stop. She was making it worse, drawing more attention to us, but she continued. "The truth is, I pursued Dr. Miller. I was interested in her, and I made that clear. She repeatedly maintained professional boundaries, even when I made it difficult for her to do so. If anyone violated ethical standards, it was me." The room was silent. I could feel the weight of their judgment, the whispered conversations that would follow us for months. "Miss Thomas," the board chair said carefully, "are you saying that you initiated an inappropriate relationship with Dr. Miller?" Elaine looked at me, and I saw something in her eyes that took my breath away. She was about to sacrifice herself to save my career, and we both knew it. "No," she said quietly. "I'm saying that I fell in love with her." And eventually she fell in love with me too. We tried to fight it, tried to maintain professional boundaries, but some things are bigger than protocol. The silence that followed was deafening. I felt like I was watching my career die in real time. "Love doesn't excuse professional misconduct," one of the board members said sternly. "Doesn't it?" Elaine asked. "When did we decide that medical professionals aren't allowed to be human? That they can't feel, can't love, can't find connection with another person?" "Dr. Miller is the best sports medicine physician I've ever worked with. She's saved careers, helped athletes recover from injuries that should have been career-ending. And you want to destroy her because she dared to fall in love?" She turned to face the board directly, her voice rising with passion. "I won't be your victim," she declared. "I won't pretend that what we have is wrong or shameful. We're two consenting adults who found each other. If that's a crime, then punish us both. But don't pretend this is about patient safety or medical ethics. This is about control, about maintaining an outdated system that treats doctors like robots instead of human beings." The board chair looked around the table at his colleagues, clearly unsure how to proceed. "Miss Thomas," he said finally, "you're asking us to ignore decades of medical ethics guidelines." "I'm asking you to show the same compassion Dr. Miller has shown me," she replied. "I'm asking you to see that love isn't the enemy of good medicine. It's what makes it possible." The hearing ended without a decision. We were told we'd be notified of the board's ruling within the week. As we left the building, reporters swarmed us, shouting questions and snapping photos. "Dr. Miller, care to comment on your relationship with Miss Thomas? Is it true you're facing a loss of license? How long has this affair been going on?" I kept my head down, trying to push through the crowd. But then I felt Elaine's hand slip into mine, her fingers interlacing with mine in a gesture that was both protective and defiant. "We're in love," she said, her voice carrying over the chaos. "Deal with it." The cameras flashed. The reporters shouted more questions, but I barely heard them. All I could focus on was the woman beside me, the woman who had just sacrificed her privacy and possibly her career to stand up for us. For the first time in weeks, I could breathe. The call came on a Friday afternoon. I was packing up my office, preparing for what I assumed would be the end of my career. The medical board had deliberated for 3 days, and I was certain they would revoke my license. Dr. Miller? The board secretary's voice was neutral, giving nothing away. The board has reached a decision. Can you come in this afternoon? My hands were shaking as I hung up the phone. I called Elaine, who insisted on coming with me despite my protest. Whatever happens, she said as we sat in the hospital parking lot, we face it together. The conference room felt different this time. The board members looked tired, like they'd been through their own ordeal. The chair cleared his throat before speaking. Dr. Miller, this case has been ... challenging. The board has spent considerable time reviewing the evidence and considering the unique circumstances. I held my breath. While we cannot condone the blurring of professional boundaries, we also recognize that the situation was complex. Miss Thomas's testimony was ... compelling. She made it clear that any breach of protocol was not initiated by you and that your medical care remained exemplary throughout. Hope began to stir in my chest, but I didn't dare let it grow. Therefore, the board has decided to issue a formal reprimand rather than revoke your license. However, this comes with conditions. You will be required to undergo additional ethics training, and you cannot continue treating Miss Thomas or any other players on the Boulder Women's Soccer Club. Relief flooded through me so quickly I felt dizzy. I still had my license. I could still practice medicine. But the condition meant I couldn't continue with the team, couldn't continue in the position I'd worked so hard to get. I understand. I said quietly, thank you. As we left the building, Elaine wrapped her arms around me in the parking lot. You did it, she whispered. You kept your license. But I lost the job, I said, the reality sinking in. I can't work with the team anymore. Then we'll figure something else out, she said simply. Together. That night, as we sat on my couch with takeout Chinese food spread across my coffee table, I finally allowed myself to think about what came next. I had a call today, Elaine sighed, picking at her low mane. From Boston. I looked up. Boston? The Boston Breakers. They want to trade for me. It's a good opportunity, a chance to play for a championship team. My heart sank. Are you going to take it? She was quiet for a moment. That depends. On what? On whether a certain sports medicine physician might be interested in a change of scenery. I hear Boston has some excellent hospitals. I stared at her. Are you asking me to move to Boston with you? I'm asking you to start over with me. She said, somewhere we can be together without all the baggage, without everyone knowing our story. Somewhere we can just be us. The idea was both terrifying and thrilling. Leave Boulder, leave everything I built here, and start fresh in a new city with the woman I loved. What about your recovery? I asked. The surgery, the rehabilitation? I'll need a good sports medicine doctor, she said with a smile. Know anyone who might be available? I laughed despite myself. I can't be your doctor, Elaine. We've been through this. No, but you could work with the team's medical staff. You could consult on my case. And maybe, eventually, when I'm fully recovered and no longer your patient. She didn't need to finish the sentence. I understood what she was offering, a chance to have both things I wanted. A career in sports medicine and a life with her. It's crazy, I said. The best things usually are. I looked at her, really looked at her. This woman who had turned my carefully ordered world upside down, who had fought for us when I was 2, scared to fight for myself, who was now offering me a future I hadn't dared to imagine. When do we leave? I asked. Her smile was brighter than the sun. Moving to Boston was like stepping into a new life. The Massachusetts General Hospital welcomed me with open arms, and my reputation as a skilled sports medicine physician proceeded. Me, the Boston Breakers were more than happy to have Elaine join their roster, and by extension, to have me consult on sports injuries for their medical team. It took 6 months of careful navigation, but eventually I was able to transition from being involved in Elaine's care to simply being the woman she came home to every night. The team's head physician took over her rehabilitation, and I watched from the sidelines as she worked tirelessly to get back to full strength. Our apartment in Back Bay was small but perfect. Elaine had chosen it specifically because it was walking distance from the hospital, and she loved that she could surprise me with lunch on days when my schedule allowed. She had framed her old Boulder jersey and hung it in my new office, a reminder of how far we'd come. "Still gonna play doctor with me?" she asked one evening, finding me unpacking the last of my medical texts. I looked up to find her leaning against the door frame, wearing nothing but one of my oversized medical school t-shirts and a mischievous grin. "That depends," I said, setting down the book I'd been holding. "Are you going to behave yourself?" Her laugh was rich and warm. "Where's the fun in that?" I crossed the room in 3 quick strides, pinning her against the wall with my body. "You know, Miss Thomas, you're a very bad influence. Is that your professional opinion, Dr. Miller?" She whispered, her hands finding their way to my hair. "My professional opinion," I said, leaning in close enough that my lips brushed her ear, "is that you're going to be the death of me." "But what a way to go," she breathed just before I kissed her. Later, as we lay tangled in our bed, the Boston skyline twinkling outside our window, I thought about the journey that had brought us here. The rules we'd broken, the risks we'd taken, the price we'd paid for love. "Do you ever regret it?" I asked, tracing lazy patterns on her bare shoulder. "What? Falling in love with you?" "Never. Even after everything we went through. The scandal, the hearing, having to leave Boulder." She was quiet for a moment, considering. "You know what I regret? I regret waiting so long to tell you how I felt. I regret all those months of pretending there was nothing between us. I regret not kissing you that first day in your office when I wanted to so badly." I propped myself up on my elbow to look at her. "You wanted to kiss me that first day?" "Jillian, I've wanted to kiss you since the moment I walked into your office. When you touched my knee during that exam, I thought I was going to combust. I spent the next 3 weeks trying to figure out how to get injured again, just so I could see you. That's terrible," I said, laughing. "And also kind of flattering. You have no idea the effect you have on people," she said, her fingers tracing the line of my jaw. "You walk into a room and everything gets brighter. You touch someone and they feel safe. You saved my career, Jillian. Not just medically, but in every way that matters." "I almost lost everything because of you," I said, but there was no accusation. "In my voice, my license, my job, my reputation. And I almost lost you," she replied, "which would have been so much worse." She was right. As I looked at her in the dim light filtering through our bedroom window, I realized that losing everything else had been worth it to have this. To have her. "I love you," I said, the words coming easily now after months of being afraid to say them. "I love you too," she replied. "And I'm going to keep loving you, even when you're old and gray and complaining about your patients." "What makes you think I'll be complaining about my patients?" "Because you already complain about your patients," she said with a grin. "You just do it in that sexy, professional way of yours." I was about to protest when she silenced me with a kiss. And as her hands began to wander, I decided that maybe some arguments weren't worth having. 2 years later, I was standing in the same medical conference room where I'd first met Elaine's replacement team physician, Dr. Sarah Chen. We were discussing A particularly complex case when Elaine burst through the door, still in her soccer uniform and cleats. "I'm sorry to interrupt," she said, breathing hard like she'd been running. "But I need to speak with Dr. Miller. It's urgent." Dr. Chun looked between us, clearly confused. "Elaine, you know the protocol. If you need medical attention, you need to go through proper channels." "This isn't medical," Elaine said, her eyes locked on mine. "This is personal." My heart started racing. Had something happened? Was she hurt? Was she in trouble? "Elaine, what's wrong?" I asked, crossing the room toward her. "Nothing's wrong," she said. And then she was dropping to one knee right there in the medical office, pulling a small velvet box from her pocket. "Everything's perfect. That's why I need to do this now, before I lose my nerve." I stopped breathing. Dr. Chun gasped behind me. "Jillian Miller," Elaine said, her voice shaking slightly, "you saved my life in more ways than one. You challenged everything I thought I knew about love, about risk, about what's worth fighting for. You gave up everything to be with me, and I want to spend the rest of my life making sure you never regret that choice." She opened the box, revealing a simple but beautiful solitaire diamond ring. "Will you marry me?" I looked down at her, this incredible woman who had changed my life so completely, and I couldn't speak. Tears were streaming down my face, but I was smiling so wide my cheeks hurt. "Yes," I whispered. "Yes, of course, yes." She slipped the ring onto my finger with trembling hands, then stood and kissed me right there in the medical office, in front of Dr. Chan and anyone else who might have been watching. I kissed her back, not caring about propriety or protocol or anything, except the fact that this amazing woman wanted to spend her life with me. "Congratulations," Dr. Chun said, her voice thick with emotion. "But maybe next time, do this somewhere that doesn't violate medical facility policies." We broke apart, laughing. "Sorry," Elaine said, but she didn't look sorry at all. "I just couldn't wait another minute." That night, we celebrated at our favorite restaurant in the North End. Elaine had made reservations weeks in advance. She confessed, planning the proposal down to the last detail. She'd even gotten permission from the team to leave practice early. "You know," I said as we walked hand in hand along the harbor, "when I first met you, I never imagined we'd end up here. We're engaged in Boston, happy." "All of the above," I said. "I thought you were trouble from the moment you walked into my office." "I was trouble," she agreed. "The best kind of trouble." She was right. She had been trouble, the kind that upended everything I thought I knew about myself, about love, about what I was willing to risk for happiness. But she'd also been salvation, showing me that a life lived safely wasn't really living at all. "I have something for you too," I said, pulling a small wrapped package from my purse. "Jillian, you didn't need to open it." She unwrapped it carefully, revealing a silver locket. Inside was a photo of us from our first official date in Boston, both of us laughing at something I couldn't remember, but the joy was captured perfectly. "It's beautiful," she said, her voice soft. "There's an inscription," I said. She turned it over and read the words I'd had engraved. "Some secrets are worth keeping, some are worth sharing. Ours is worth everything." When she looked up at me, her eyes were bright with tears. "I love you," she said simply. "I love you too," I replied. "And I can't wait to be your wife." We got married on a perfect September day at the Boston Public Garden. It was a small ceremony, just close friends and family, some of my medical colleagues, and half the Boston Breakers team. Elaine's parents flew in from California, and while they'd initially been concerned about the scandal that had surrounded our relationship, they'd come to accept that their daughter was happy, and that was all that mattered. I wore a simple white dress that I'd found in a boutique in Cambridge. Elaine wore a navy blue suit that made her eyes look like sapphires. We'd written our own vows, and when it came time to speak, I looked out at the small gathering of people who supported us and felt overwhelmed with gratitude. When I first became a doctor, I said, my voice carrying across the garden, I thought I knew what healing meant. I thought it was about fixing what was broken, about following protocols, and maintaining professional distance. But Elaine taught me that real healing requires connection, requires vulnerability, requires the courage to let someone see you completely. I looked at her, beautiful and radiant in the afternoon sunlight. She taught me that love isn't the opposite of professional dedication. It's what makes that dedication meaningful. She showed me that the best doctors aren't the ones who never feel, but the ones who feel deeply and still find the strength to help others. She saved me from a life of clinical detachment and gave me a life of purpose and joy. I paused, swallowing hard against the emotion in my throat. Elaine, you are my patient, my partner, my best friend, and my greatest love. You are the reason I wake up every morning excited about the day ahead. You are my home, my adventure, and my peace all at once. I promise to love you through every injury, every victory, every challenge that comes our way. I promise to be your teammate for life. When it was her turn, Elaine stepped forward and took my hands. Jillian, she said, her voice strong and clear, you've heard our story. You know about the rules we broke, the risks we took, the price we paid for love. What you might not know is that I would do it all again, exactly the same way, because it led me to this moment. She squeezed my hands gently. You see, I used to think that love was something that happened to you, something that knocked you off your feet and left you breathless. And it is that. The first time I saw you, I literally forgot how to breathe. But I've learned that real love isn't just about those moments of breathless attraction. It's about choosing each other every day, even when it's difficult. It's about building something together that's stronger than what either of you could create alone. She looked out at our guest, then back at me. Jillian chose me when it would have been easier to choose her career. She chose us when the whole world was watching and judging. She chose love when love required sacrifice. And now I get to choose her every day for the rest of my life. There wasn't a dry eye in the garden when she finished. The ceremony was simple, the reception was intimate, and the whole day felt like a celebration, not just of our love, but of the journey that had brought us there. Later, as we danced to our first song as a married couple, I thought about how far we'd come from that first day in my office, when I tried so hard to maintain professional boundaries. Any regrets, Dr. Miller Thomas? Elaine asked as we swayed together. I smiled at the new name I'd taken. Just one. What's that? I wish I'd kissed you that first day, I said. Would have saved us a lot of trouble. But then we wouldn't have this story to tell, she pointed out. And it's a pretty good story. She was right. It was a story about breaking rules and finding love, about choosing each other despite the consequences, about discovering that sometimes the most professional thing you can do is acknowledge that you're human. Besides, she continued, spinning me around on the dance floor, I like our story. It's messy and complicated and beautiful, just like real love should be. As the music swelled around us, I realized she was absolutely right. Our story wasn't perfect, but it was ours. And that made it perfect enough. 3 years into our marriage, I thought we'd weathered every storm. We'd built a life together in Boston, established our careers, found our rhythm as a couple. Elaine was playing the best soccer of her career, and I'd been promoted to head of sports medicine at Mass General. We were talking about starting a family, maybe buying a house outside the city. Everything was falling into place. Then the phone call came. Jillian? Elaine's voice was strange, distant. I need you to come to the training facility, now. What's wrong? I asked, already reaching for my keys. Are you hurt? Just ... please come. I need to tell you something, and I need to tell you in person. The drive to the training facility felt like the longest 20 minutes of my life. I found Elaine sitting alone in the locker room, still in her practice gear, staring at her hands. Elaine, you're scaring me. What's going on? She looked up, and I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before. Fear. Real, bone-deep fear. I got a call from the league office today, she said quietly. There's been an investigation. Someone leaked information about us, about how we met, about the medical board hearing. They're questioning whether I should have been allowed to play professionally after being involved in a medical ethics scandal. My blood ran cold. What kind of investigation? They're reviewing my eligibility. They're saying that because I was involved in your professional misconduct case. I might have gained an unfair advantage in my career. They think you might have given me preferential treatment or medical information that helped my performance. That's insane, I said, sinking onto the bench beside her. You know, I never treated you differently. If anything, I was harder on you than other patients because I was so worried about maintaining boundaries. I know that. You know that. But they don't care about the truth. They care about appearances, about protecting the league's reputation. And our love story, it's become a liability. I felt like I was going to be sick. What are they saying exactly? They want to suspend me pending a full investigation. They want to review all my medical records, interview everyone who was involved. In my care, re-examine my recovery timeline. They're treating me like I'm some kind of criminal. I reached for her hand, but she pulled away. There's more, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. They're also looking into your current position. They're questioning whether the hospital should have hired you given your history. They think you might be a liability to any team or athlete you treat. The room felt like it was spinning. After everything we'd been through, after we'd rebuilt our lives and careers, it was happening again. The scrutiny, the judgment, the threat to everything we'd worked for. We'll fight this, I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. We fought it before and won. We can do it again. Can we? Elaine asked, and for the first time since I'd known her, she sounded defeated. I'm tired, Jillian. I'm tired of defending our love, tired of proving that we're not criminals, tired of having our relationship dissected by people who don't understand what we've been through. So what are you saying? She was quiet for a long moment. I'm saying maybe they're right. Maybe we are too much trouble. Maybe we've been selfish, pursuing our own happiness without considering the consequences for everyone else. Don't, I said sharply. Don't let them make you doubt what we have. What if I retire? She asked suddenly. What if I just walk away from soccer entirely? Then there's no investigation, no scandal, no threat to your career. Elaine, soccer is your life. You can't just give it up. You gave up your position with Boulder for me, she pointed out. You've sacrificed for. Used before. That was different. That was my choice. And this is mine. We sat in silence for a moment, both of us processing what this meant. Another scandal, another fight, another test of whether our love was strong enough to weather the storm. What do you want to do? I asked finally. I want to run away, she said with a bitter laugh. I want to take you somewhere far from here, somewhere no one knows our story, and just be normal for a while. We could do that, I said softly. We could go back to Europe or Australia or anywhere you want. I could practice medicine there. You could coach or teach or do whatever makes you happy. You'd really do that? Give up everything here? I'd give up everything anywhere for you, I said. I thought you knew that by now. She looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw some of the fear leave her eyes. I love you, she said simply. More than soccer, more than my career, more than anything. But I don't want to keep being the reason you have to sacrifice things. You're not the reason, I said firmly. You're the reason it's all worth it. The investigation lasted 4 months. 4 months of lawyers and depositions and media speculation. 4 months of reliving every moment of our relationship, every decision we'd made, every boundary we'd crossed. It was exhausting and humiliating, and at times I wondered if we were strong enough to survive it. But we did survive it. The league eventually cleared Elaine of any wrongdoing, acknowledging that she'd never received preferential treatment and that her success was entirely due to her own talent and hard work. My hospital stood by me, recognizing that I'd already been sanctioned by the medical board and that my record since then had been exemplary. When it was over, we were both different people. Harder maybe, but also more certain of what we had. I have something to tell you, Elaine said one evening as we sat on our couch, sharing a bottle of wine and trying to process everything that had happened. Good something or bad something? I asked, suddenly nervous. Good something, she said, smiling for the first time in months. Really good something. She reached into her purse and pulled out a manila envelope. What's this? Open it. Inside was a letter from the International Olympic Committee, an invitation for Elaine to try out for the U.S. women's national team for the upcoming Olympics. Oh my God, I breathed. Elaine, this is huge. I know. Apparently, all the media attention actually helped. It reminded people that I exist, that I'm still playing at an elite level. The national team coach has been watching my games, and she thinks I could be a valuable addition to the squad. I threw my arms around her, both of us crying and laughing. At the same time, I'm so proud of you, I whispered. You deserve this. We deserve this, she corrected. After everything we've been through, we deserve something good. She was right. We did deserve something good. And as I held her in our living room, surrounded by the life we'd built together despite every obstacle, I realized that we'd already gotten it. Everything else was just icing on the cake. Making the Olympic team changed everything for Elaine. The rigorous training schedule, the media attention, the pressure of representing her country, it was everything she'd dreamed of, and more than she'd ever imagined she could handle. I watched her transform during those months of preparation. She became stronger, more focused, more determined than I'd ever seen her. She was up at 5 a.m. for training, spent hours in the gym, followed a strict diet that I helped her maintain. She was magnificent, but the Olympics also meant separation. The team had to report to training camp 6 weeks before the games, and then they'd be in Paris for nearly a month. It would be the longest we'd been apart since we'd gotten married. I wish you could come with me, she said the night before she left for camp. We were lying in bed, her head on my chest, both of us trying to memorize the feeling of being together. I wish I could too, I said, running my fingers through her hair, but you know I'll be cheering for you from here. It won't be the same. No, it won't. But you'll be amazing. You'll represent your country and you'll make me proud. And when you come home, I'll be right here waiting for you. She lifted her head to look at me. What if I don't make the final roster? What if I get injured? What if I mess up? Vin, you'll deal with it, and I'll still be proud of you for trying. Elaine, you've already won. You've already proven that you belong at this level. Everything else is just playing the game you love. The morning she left, I drove her to the airport. We didn't say much during the drive. There wasn't much left to say at security. She turned to me with tears in her eyes. I love you, she said, kissing me goodbye. I'll call you every day. I love you too. Now go make history. Watching her walk through security was one of the hardest things I'd ever done, but I was also incredibly proud. This woman, my wife, was about to compete in the Olympics. After everything we'd been through, after all the people who had tried to tear us down, She was going to represent her country on the world's biggest stage. The next 6 weeks felt like the longest of my life. We talked every day, sometimes for hours, but it wasn't the same as having her there. I threw myself into work, picking up extra shifts, consulting on complex cases, anything to keep busy. My colleagues were incredibly supportive, understanding that I was dealing with something bigger than just missing my wife. Finally, the day came. The Olympics were starting, and I had a ticket to Paris. The hospital had given me time off, recognizing that this was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I'd never been to the Olympics before, and walking into the stadium for the opening ceremony was overwhelming. The energy, the excitement, the sheer scale of it all, it was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. But none of that mattered when I saw Elaine march in with the U.S. team. She looked radiant in her Team U.S. tracksuit, waving to the crowd with that brilliant smile I'd fallen in love with. When she spotted me in the stands, her smile got even brighter, and she blew me a kiss that made my heart soar. The women's soccer tournament was structured differently than other sports. The team played several games during the first week, and if they advanced, they'd play for medals in the second week. Elaine started every game, playing with a passion and skill that reminded me why I'd fallen in love with her in the first place. They won their first game 3-1, with Elaine scoring 1 goal and assisting on another. After the game, she found me in the family section, still in her uniform, sweaty and exhausted, but glowing with joy. "Did you see that?" she asked, practically bouncing with excitement. "Did you see that goal?" "I saw it," I said, kissing her forehead. "You were incredible." "I can't believe I'm here," she said, her voice full of wonder. "I can't believe this is really happening. You belong here," I told her. "You've always belonged here." They won their second game too, and their third. Suddenly, they were in the medal round, and Elaine was being talked about as one of the standout players of the tournament. Sports commentators were calling her the veteran with the young heart, praising her leadership and her ability to perform under pressure. The semifinal was against Brazil, the defending champions. It was a brutal game, physical and intense, with both teams desperate to reach the final. With 10 minutes left, the score was tied 1-1. That's when Elaine made her move. She stole the ball at midfield, sprinted past 2 defenders, and fired a shot that hit the upper corner of the goal with such precision that the goalkeeper barely had time to react. The stadium erupted. I was on my feet, screaming and crying, and jumping up and down like a crazy person. Elaine was mobbed by her teammates, but over their shoulders, she found me in the stands and pointed directly at me. They held on to win 2-1. The United States was going to the Olympic final. After the game, I met Elaine outside the locker room. She was still in her uniform, her hair a mess, her face streaked with sweat and tears. "We did it," she said, throwing her arms around me. "We're in the final." "You did it," I corrected her. "That goal was incredible." "I was thinking about you when I shot," she said. "I was thinking about everything we've been through, everything we've overcome. I was thinking about how you've never stopped believing in me, even when I stopped believing in myself. I'll never stop believing in you," I promised. The final was against Germany, a team that had dominated women's soccer for years. It was scheduled for Saturday afternoon, and the entire week leading up to it was a blur of media obligations, training sessions, and mounting pressure. I barely saw Elaine during those days. She was completely focused on the game, and I didn't want to be a distraction. But the night before the final, she called me. "I'm scared," she admitted. "What if I mess up? What if I let the team down?" "You won't," I said firmly. "But even if you did, it wouldn't change anything. You've already accomplished something incredible. You've already made your country proud. You've already proven that you belong at this level." I just want to win so badly, she said. Not just for me, but for everyone who supported us. For everyone who stood by us when things got difficult. Then win, I said simply. You have everything you need. You're talented, you're prepared, and you're playing with a team that believes in you. Trust yourself. The final was the most intense 90 minutes of my life. Germany scored first, just 15 minutes into the game. I watched Elaine's shoulders slump slightly, saw her teammates' faces fall. But then she did what great athletes do, she responded. She didn't score the equalizing goal, but she created it, threading a perfect pass through 3 defenders to set up her teammate for an easy finish. The stadium went wild, and I found myself crying again. The game went to extra time, then to penalty kicks. I could barely watch as each player stepped up to take their shot. When it was Elaine's turn, I held my breath. She approached the ball with the same confidence she'd shown in everything else. Her shot was perfect, placed exactly where the goalkeeper couldn't reach it. The net bulged, and she raised her arms in triumph. The United States won 4-2 on penalties. They were Olympic champions. I watched from the stands as Elaine and her teammates celebrated on the field, hugging and crying and laughing all at once. When they were finally presented with their gold medals, I was crying so hard I could barely see. But I'll never forget the moment when Elaine, wearing her gold medal and holding a small American flag, looked up into the stands and found me. She held up the medal, pointing at me, and mouthed the words, "This is for you." Later, at the team celebration, she pulled me aside. "I have something for you," she said, reaching into her bag. "Elaine, you don't need to give me anything. Watching you win was enough." "No," she said firmly. "This is important." She pulled out a small box, similar to the one she'd used to propose to me years earlier, but this one was different. "What's this? Open it." Inside was a pendant, simple and elegant, with her gold medal hanging from a delicate chain. "I can't take this," I said, stunned. "This is your medal. You earned it." "We earned it," she corrected. "Every training session, every sacrifice, every moment of doubt, we went through it together. This medal represents everything we've overcome, everything we've accomplished. I want you to have it." I looked at the medal, then at her, then back at the medal. It was the most beautiful thing I'd ever seen. "Are you sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything," she said, fastening the chain around my neck. "Besides, they gave me 2. One for winning and one for you." That night, we celebrated with her teammates and their families. I wore the medal proudly, and every time someone asked about it, I told them about the incredible woman who had given it to me. But the real celebration came later, when we were alone in our hotel room, finally able to process everything that had happened. "I'm so proud of you," I said, lying in bed with her, both of us still too excited to sleep. "I couldn't have done it without you," she replied. "Every time I wanted to quit, every time I thought I wasn't good enough, I thought about you. About how you've never given up on us, never given up on me." "I never will," I promised. "I know," she said, snuggling closer. "That's what makes you so amazing." As I held her that night, Olympic gold medal around my neck, and the woman of my dreams. In my arms, I thought about the journey that had brought us here. From that first examination in Boulder to this moment in Paris, we'd faced every challenge together. We'd been tested, judged, scrutinized, and criticized. But we'd also been celebrated, supported, and loved. And now we were Olympic champions, now. 5 years later, I'm sitting in my office at the Sports Medicine Institute we opened together, watching Elaine conduct a youth soccer clinic through my window. She retired from professional soccer after the Olympics, deciding she wanted to give back to the next generation of athletes. The clinic is part of our foundation, which provides medical care and training opportunities for young athletes who might not otherwise have access to them. My practice has grown beyond anything I imagined. I specialize in treating female athletes, and I've become something of an expert in the unique challenges women face in sports. I've written papers, given lectures, and consulted with teams around the world. But more importantly, I've helped hundreds of athletes recover from injuries and return to the sports they love. The scandal that once threatened to destroy our careers has become something entirely different. We're often asked to speak at conferences about ethics in sports medicine, about the importance of maintaining professional boundaries while still providing compassionate care. We've turned our story into a teaching tool, helping young doctors and athletes understand the complexities of relationships in high-pressure environments. But it's not just about our careers. We've built a life together that's richer and more fulfilling than anything I could have imagined when I was just Dr. Jillian Miller, the sports medicine physician who was so focused on maintaining professional distance that she almost missed out on the love of her life. We bought a house in Brookline, an old Victorian with a big backyard where Elaine can practice her juggling and I can garden. We have 2 dogs, a golden retriever named Penalty and a border collie named Assist. We host dinner parties for our friends, travel to medical conferences and soccer tournaments, and spend quiet evenings at home reading or watching movies, and we're trying to have a baby. It's been a year since we started the process, working with a fertility specialist to navigate the world of IVF and artificial insemination. It's been challenging, both emotionally and physically, but we're facing it the same way we face everything else, together. Any luck today? Elaine asks, coming into my office after finishing her clinic. She's sweaty and grass-stained, but she looks happier than I've ever seen her. Dr. Rodriguez called, I say, unable to keep the smile off my face. The test was positive. For a moment, she doesn't react. Then her face breaks into the biggest smile I've ever seen. Really? Are you serious? I'm pregnant, I confirm, laughing as she lifts me off my feet and spins me around. We're having a baby, she says, setting me down gently. We're actually having a baby. We're having a baby, I repeat, still hardly believing it myself. She kisses me then, soft and sweet and full of promise. When we break apart, there are tears in both our eyes. I love you, she whispers. I love you too, I reply. All of you. All of us. Later that evening, we're sitting on our back porch, watching the sunset and talking about the future, about cribs and baby names and how we're going to balance our careers with parenthood. Do you think we'll tell our kid about how we met? Elaine asks, her hand resting on my still flat stomach. Of course we will, I say. It's a good story. Even the scandalous parts, especially the scandalous parts, I laugh. We'll tell them about how sometimes the most important things in life require breaking a few rules. About how love is worth fighting for, even when it seems impossible. And about how their mom is a badass who took on the medical establishment for love, she adds. And about how their other mom is an Olympic champion who taught me that the best kind of trouble is the kind that changes your life. We sit in comfortable silence for a while, both of us processing the magnitude of what's happening. We're going to be parents. We're going to raise a child together, teach them about love and courage and standing up for what's right. I have something for you, Elaine says suddenly, reaching into her pocket. What is it with you and surprise gifts? I ask, laughing. It's not a gift exactly, she says, pulling out a small notebook. It's something I've been working on. She hands me the notebook, and I open it to find pages and pages of her handwriting. Stories, memories, reflections on our journey together. I've been writing down our story, she explains. Everything from that first day in your office to today. I want our child to know where they came from, to understand the love that brought them into existence. I flipped through the pages, reading snippets of our life together. The first time we kissed, the scandal that nearly destroyed us, the Olympics, the quiet moments in between. It's all there, recorded in her careful handwriting. This is beautiful, I say, tears pricking my eyes again. It's perfect. I thought maybe we could finish it together, she says. Add to it as we go. Make it a family history. I'd love that, I say, closing the notebook and setting it aside so I can pull her closer. I love you, Elaine Thomas Miller. I love the life we've built together. I love the family we're creating. I love you too, Jillian Thomas Miller, she replies, using the hyphenated name we both took after our wedding. And I love our baby already. As the sun sets behind us, painting the sky in shades of pink and gold, I think about the story we're going to tell our child. About the doctor who fell in love with her patient, about the athlete who risked everything for love, about the couple who refused to let anyone else define their relationship. It's a story about breaking rules and facing consequences, about choosing love over safety, about fighting for what matters most. It's a story about two people who found each other against all odds and built something beautiful together. But most importantly, it's a story about how sometimes the most professional thing you can do is acknowledge that you're human, that you're capable of love, of making mistakes, of growing and changing and becoming something better than you were before. Our child will grow up knowing that they were born from love, not just the love between two people, but the love that exists when you find someone worth fighting for. They'll know that their mothers were brave enough to choose each other over and over again, no matter what anyone else said. And maybe, if we're lucky, they'll learn that the best stories aren't the ones where everything goes according to plan. They're the ones where people take risks, make mistakes, and find their way to something beautiful despite the obstacles. Because that's what love is, really. It's not about following the rules or taking the safe path. It's about finding someone who makes you want to be braver, kinder, more authentic than you ever thought possible. It's about building something together that's stronger than what either of you could create alone. And that's exactly what we did. Against all odds, despite every obstacle, in the face of judgment and criticism and professional consequences, we chose each other. We chose love, and we're still choosing it every single day. That's the story I want to tell our child. That's the legacy we're building together, not just as a couple, but as a family. Because some secrets are worth keeping, some are worth sharing, and ours, our love, our story, our family is worth everything.